This is the IBJ podcast for the week of Monday, October 18th, 2024, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Windsor Jewelry has operated within a stone's throw of Monument Circle since the year 1919. Some of its client relationships go back 5 generations. It has been owned by only 3 people. Its founder, Sig Asher, then Asher's son-in-law, Herman Logan, and then Greg Bires, an employee who bought the business from Logan in 1998. It has survived the Great Depression, the economic hardships of World War II, the Great Recession, and most recently, the 1-2 punch of the pandemic and rioters who broke into the store twice in mid-2020. Last week, Windsor's dedicated customers and passersby on Meridian Street learned that everything must go. Bires has decided to retire and is selling the store's inventory at deep discounts with plans to close up shop early next year. Business has been good, he says. In fact, he's been making inroads with a new generation of customers. And it's possible the Windsor Jewelry name might live on if buyers could be persuaded by some prospective buyer to sell the store's intellectual property. But it appears that Windsor Jewelry, as we know it, will end its run at about 105 years old, and just after Bires hits his 70th birthday in December. Bires is our guest this week for a wide-ranging conversation about how he came to the decision to retire after about 55 years in the jewelry business, a career that started in his early teens. He also explains how the shop was able to persevere through the pandemic era and then take advantage of the way downtown is morphing into more of a residential center. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast Greg Bires, owner of Windsor Jewelry right off of Monument Circle in downtown Indianapolis. Greg, I know this has been an incredibly busy week for you, so I really appreciate you making some time to talk.
Thanks, Mason. I appreciate the invite.
I know by now you have a short, convenient answer for this question, so that you probably get asked it 50 times a day. But why did you decide it was time to retire and take all the time you need? Don't need to shorten it for us.
It was a really hard decision. Because I really do not want to retire. I feel really good. I love my business. I love what I do. I've done it my entire life, and things are going well. But in a few weeks, I'm going to turn 70 years old. And I just feel that I need to get the store into a place that I hope I never have an illness, but at my age, it's a reality. And another reason that's really important to me is I have 8 grandchildren now, and they live everywhere but here. And so I just want to be a little more flexible to be in their lives. I'm missing a lot, and they're growing up fast. And so Lynn, my wife, and I, we decided that now's the time that maybe we can do this while we're healthy and just enjoy the things that we've missed over the years running a store like we do.
How did you come to this decision to close the business, or was there really any other option for you?
I explored the possibility of selling the business. And in today's economy, because of borrowing money, it's not as easy as it was when I did it many years ago. And it takes a pretty good chunk of money to buy a store like mine because of the inventory and the reputation. So this was plan B, and that's where we're at now.
How many employees do you have?
We have 9 employees.
You were an employee when you purchased the business
Correct.
in 98.
Yes.
Did you offer to the employees at all and say, is anybody interested in taking this on, or to any family members?
Family members, no, but employees, yes. And there was some very strong interest, but it all boiled down to finding that kind of money to pull that off.
Things are going okay. You could have continued on for another 5-10 years.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, downtown now, I know it's a lot of disarray, but I see it moving forward with all the infrastructure that's in the works now. But more than anything, the number of people moving down here to live, I've never seen this kind of activity with residences since I've been here. And I'm capturing many of those people. There's really nowhere else for them to shop. And so I see every day several people that have never been in the store in their entire life And I ask why. And their reason is because we live downtown now and we want to shop somewhere close.
Yeah, I mean, we've been tracking this, obviously, I think for the last 10 years, and the influx of new apartments, and it kind of started on I believe, the east side of downtown, and then just spread this way. And then it opened up around the canal. And then, I mean, right down the gut of Meridian Street. You know, we have the former AT&T building that is now high-end apartments. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And you felt that.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, I know exactly who comes in my door, and I know if I don't recognize them, I make a point to go and introduce myself and just find out why they're here and what brought them in the store. And it's been amazing that how many people that I've never seen before in the last year and a half, 2 years. So that's a good thing for a business like mine, because you have to build a customer base that will give you longevity down the road, because you have customers that age out because maybe they're done buying jewelry, or because of their age, or maybe they retire and move away. And then so you need people to replace those. I'm seeing that finally. So I think the whole atmosphere down here is going to be fine in a few years once all of this construction and things that are going on get completed.
When you value the business, when you were having conversations about selling the business potentially, there's the inventory, obviously. What else are you selling? I mean, is it those relationships? I mean, you know, in a way, I mean, sometimes when you're selling a business, you're selling the employees, or you're selling a client list. Are those things that factor into it?
There's a lot of things. Inventory is one. Relationships, customer loyalty that we have is another big one in our mailing list. But in today's time of social media, I think one of the biggest assets you can have is the online reviews that are all exceptional. And we have worked very hard over the last 5 years to capture reviews by asking our customers to do them. And fortunately, they have all followed through. And the majority of people that come in our door today, the reason they're there is because they read a review. That's how this generation shops. They get online, they Google the service they're looking for, they read the reviews, and whoever has the best reviews wins. So that's a big factor. And that's something else I'm selling as value with my business.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, word of mouth just used to be that. I mean, word of mouth. I mean, you see a buddy, you know, at a party, or you have dinner with another couple, and they say, hey, where'd that come from? And now it just is quantifiable. It's like a video game.
Exactly. And we've never been a big marketing store with advertising. And we've always had a good, strong business. And what you just said, word of mouth, has always driven our business. We sell or help somebody with something, and then they tell their friends what a great experience it was. And then those friends come in, and then they tell their friends. And so that has kept us going for 105 years. And I feel that's probably the strongest thing that we have in our business is our reputation.
So you have an inventory. When are you finally going to close the store for good?
We're scheduling the sale to end like the first week of January. And we're going to go through Christmas and then start wrapping it up.
Is the mission to unload the whole kit and caboodle? You need to sell everything that's in the inventory.
Right.
Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Because I'm sure you have a lot of stuff in reserve.
We have 3 big safes, and we have years and years of inventory, that a lot of loose stones that we're mounting up to put into really nice jewelry.
Is that right? Just isolated stones
yes.
that you need to do something with. And
right.
so you can create a piece of jewelry.
Exactly.
Wow.
Because people like to walk out with something they can wear. So anyway, we're getting all this prepared, and we're going to offer this, some things people have never seen before. And as time goes on, values get even better towards the end of the sale. But I could tell you this right now, from the activity we've had in the last 3 days, that there is a sense of urgency, because everyone coming in is wanting to buy something. So there's a lot of beautiful things, but towards the end of the sale, it's going to be very slim, the amount of inventory. So it's really nice how people are reacting to what's going on in the store.
Are November, December typically your best months, I would assume,
yes,
because of the holidays?
December, it starts usually around Thanksgiving, right after, obviously. But December is always our strongest month. But our store's been pretty consistently steady year-round, because we've sold so many engagement rings over the years. They come in for birthdays, anniversaries. And so year round, we stay steady. But yes, December is a big month.
This is fascinating. Now that you've said this, I want to know. So the areas of the calendar that you know are going to be good for business. You've got December. And now you mentioned weddings. I'm guessing, well, when do people typically get engaged? I mean, it's not the same thing as having the wedding.
It's year round, but it seems like spring is a big bridal month for us. And then the holidays too. For some reason, a lot of people want to get engaged over the holidays. Maybe because they travel and they're together with family. But it's pretty steady year round, but creates a relationship that's lifelong.
I know that you have, just taking a look at some of our past stories about you guys, I mean, you have multiple generations, 4 or 5 generations
we have several
of family business. Yeah.
Several fifth-generation families. As a matter of fact, a woman was in yesterday who, a year ago, they had another wedding in the family, and there were 5 generations of women. They took a picture, and they all held out their Windsor ring and sent me the photo. It was awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
It was nice.
Boy, that's an ad you could go with if you ever decided to get back into the business. That's really great. Forgive me if you said this already, but how many employees do you
9.
have? 9? Okay. And then how soon were they brought into this decision?
That was something that was very difficult for me because when you do a sale of this magnitude, there's a lot of marketing involved. And it's very critical that the word doesn't get out because there are other big box stores with deep pockets that could counter market our sale that I couldn't compete with. So unfortunately, I told everyone we are having this special sale and I gave them the dynamics of it, but I didn't tell them the reason. They kind of had an idea because I've talked about that. I've got to think about this for years, that I've got to plan my exit strategy. So I was unable to tell them till a week ago yesterday. So a week before the sale started. And that was a hard thing for me to do because my employees are very loyal and they're really like family, but it was best for this sale that we kept it that way.
When did the first public notice go out that you were going out of business?
We mailed invitations to our customer base only. They were the only ones that knew about it when it started on Monday, Veterans Day this week. And we didn't start to put out much of the signage until Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So all of my customers have had the first crack at everything. And now it's going to start to really ramp up to where everyone in the city is going to know about it.
I believe that I saw it, the signage on Monday. Is that?
Yes.
Did it go up over the weekend?
We did it over the weekend.
Okay. So over the last week or so, have you had any doubts that you were doing the right thing?
It was very stressful leading up to the start of this sale because it's nothing like I've ever done before marketing-wise. But when Monday came, it was so overwhelming, both just the amount of people in the store, but emotionally, because everyone that was coming in was a lifelong customer. And they were coming in just as much to wish me well as they were to make their last purchase. And so that was a tough day. And then Tuesday was just as good as Monday. And Wednesday was just as good as Monday, Tuesday. And I just was overwhelmed by the support. So I realized that this was the right thing because it gave all my friends an opportunity to just let me know how they feel about the store and myself.
What are you telling customers about where they can go next?
I still hope that at some point somebody comes to me and says, I'd love to buy the store and the name because it's going to be a lot easier after the sale because the inventory's gone as far as the purchase. That would be the ideal scenario. And right now, what I'm telling everybody, I want them to contact me at the end of December because I'm working on, if I have to direct them someplace, I want to research this and I want to make sure it's the right, I make the right decision and that they get the same care and service that I've given them wherever I recommend. And so that's, right now, I don't have that in place, but I'm working on that.
At the end of the year, my bonus check is just unbelievable. And I think I would love to be in the jewelry business. You would be receptive to my call, provided I had, a group of guys, of jewelers with expertise and the right kind of connections.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's
so
what I would
it's
hope
still,
for.
still open.
Well, it's possible because I researched that. And if somebody wanted to buy the infrastructure, the showcases, the equipment, if somebody wanted to buy my name, if somebody wanted to buy my mailing list, it's all for sale.
It's all for sale. Okay.
Yes.
So that's an ongoing part
Right.
of the sale.
Yes.
So here's a little bit of background on Windsor Jewelry. Correct me if I have some of this wrong. So the business was founded by Sig Asher,
Correct.
1919, downtown Indianapolis. But the shop was located at 135 North Illinois, which is like 3 blocks away.
Right.
Now, Asher's son-in-law, Herman Logan, owned the store from 1946 to 1998.
Correct.
In 1970, during Herman Logan's tenure, Windsor Jewelry moved from Illinois Street to the current location.
Yes.
Do you know why?
They demolished that block to build Market Tower, which is the building on Market in Illinois on the northeast corner. And that whole block was demolished. So they were told, we're doing this, and I forgot what time of the year it was, and you need to move because the buildings will be gone. And so they started to look for a location, and that's when they found the Guarantee Building on the south spoke of the Monument Circle. And we've been in those 2 locations the entire 105 years.
Yeah, and that's a 9-iron away from the old location.
Oh, yeah, you can almost see it if the building.
Very fortunate. So you were hired by Herman Logan in 1984?
Correct.
To do what? What was your role?
So when I moved to Indianapolis, I had been a goldsmith and a jewelry designer for 19 years in Northwest Indiana. I started as a young man in high school and learned the trade and then continued on. And we had an opportunity to move anywhere in southern Indiana for my wife's job at the time. So we chose Indianapolis, and I had talked to Herman Logan on the phone multiple times because he was the president of Indiana Jewelers. And I just used him as a resource. So then when I finally moved here, I did take a job at a small store on the east side. It was a good company, but I just didn't see any future with this firm. And then coincidentally, Herman calls me after we physically met and says, hey, let's have lunch. He set that up because he wanted to offer me a job. And so then I wasn't sure that I wanted to make a change, but the more I got to know him, the more I liked him. So I took the opportunity. But what he needed me for was to help him run the front of the store, the retail part of it, which I didn't have a lot of experience. And so he mentored me over the years on how to run a jewelry store. And my skills in the shop, I still use them occasionally, but I that kind of faded. And now I'm strictly on the front end of the store.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast in my interview with Greg Bires about retiring from the jewelry business after running one of the oldest companies in the city. Let me back up for a second. So you got into the business when you were in high school?
Yes.
My wife, among other things, is a career counselor, and she's going to want to know, how does somebody, 14, 15 years old,
exactly
get into the jewelry business?
It was in between 8th grade and freshman year. And this is a great story, too. A neighbor had a store just like the one I own now. And he would always have a high school kid in there to do simple jobs like soldering charms or maybe engraving ID bracelets, which were popular back then, to keep his craftsmen from wasting time with small little things. So I did that all through high school. And then he convinced me to make a career out of it and go to a trade school and learn to be a diamond setter, a goldsmith, a jewelry designer, a little bit of watchmaking. And fortunately, I took his advice. But the funny part of this story was that it wasn't until probably 25 years later, his daughter told me that my mother called him and said, Don was his name, Don Troxel, And she said, Don, she goes, we have to get Gregory off the streets. Could you hire him? We lived in Gary, Indiana, and I was okay. I wasn't a troublemaker, but she wanted to make sure that I had somebody supervising me. And you know what? Things work out for a reason. So that's how I landed where I'm at.
What you described what you were doing earlier in your career, I mean, it sounds like super meticulous work. I mean, that's not for everybody. Did you just find yourself to be very good at it? That was just your style?
I have a mechanical aptitude, and jewelry repair and designing jewelry, that type of work, you have to learn to figure out how things fit together, how things work together, how to make something this big fit something that small. Anyway, I was good at that. So it came pretty easy for me. And I was lucky I had a lot of great instructors and people that were able to share their skills with me.
Before we met today, we were supposed to meet at 8:45, right? I mean, and our buildings are right across the street from each other. And you called me at 8:35 and said you would be 1 minute late.
Well,
like, okay, this guy is detail oriented, which I really appreciate, which is really great. But no one has ever done that before.
Well, you told me you were going to be waiting outside. And I said, and I felt bad that I was going to make you wait outside. So anyway,
a guy that works with watches would appreciate the difference between 1 minute and not 1 minute. So I thought that was funny. But again, I mean, it's really meticulous work. Was it tough initially to jump out in front on the retail side of the business? That's something you kind of had to develop an aptitude for?
Yes and no. I've always been really good with people, and I can talk to people easily, and I get along with everybody. To me, being a retailer, it's about developing a relationship with somebody. And if they trust you and feel good about you as a person, it's a lot easier for you to help them with their purchase because now they're comfortable. They feel that they're being taken care of. And I think was my strong point, is that I could really relate and bond with people and become friends with them. So that's what I think why I was so successful in this store.
How has Windsor Jewelry benefited from its location? Just you're a beanbag toss away from the circle. Has it helped to have that specific location, or do you think you could have done just as well if you'd been located near any like retail dense area?
Without a doubt, that spot, and even when, before I knew anything about downtown, for some reason that spot has been a good traffic area for people walking from the south side of the circle, Meridian Street, to get to the other side of the circle. I don't know what it is, but I think there's a lot of traffic going through that corridor. And so we're visible. And it's always been steady there. And I've watched a lot of other businesses around the circle come and go. And for some reason, and I think a lot of it is our relationships with our customers. They make an effort to come to our store, no doubt. But I think being able to say on the South Toluca Monument Circle, I mean, everybody in the world knows where you're at. It helps. And we have a photo that we've used forever where our sign is backdropped by the monument. And I mean, how can you not find that?
Yeah. That's the language that I use when I tell people when they're coming to the office. Right. Is we're on the southern spoke of the circle. In 2020, it was not the greatest location. So you closed like just about everybody did in the early days of the pandemic. And then you reopened, I think, Wednesday, May 27th.
Correct.
But you really didn't make it through the weekend. So the store became one of the businesses hardest hit by the riots that followed the Black Lives Matter protests at the end of May. Remind us what happened to the store on the 29th and then leading into early morning on May 30th.
We were closed for the pandemic for nearly 3 months. It was 11 weeks. And on Wednesday, we reopened. We got permission to reopen. We had mandatory shutdown. And we had permission to reopen Wednesday. And Friday, 2 days later, we get a notice from the city that they're expecting some peaceful protest on Saturday. And so they wanted us to be alert that there could be a large gathering of people on Monument Circle Saturday. Well, nobody was ready for it. But Friday night was the test riot. And that's what I call it. And so Friday night, the city was just decimated. And my store was in the middle of it. Every inch of glass that they could break, both inside and outside, was destroyed. Every bit of the infrastructure that they could destroy was destroyed. Fortunately, they didn't have the capability of penetrating our safes. And so
your inventory was locked away.
Most of it.
Yeah.
We had some out. We do leave some out. We're allowed to, but we don't do that any longer. So we do a lot of things different now because of that. So anyway, they did get into the store, and for many hours, 3-4 hours, they were without any intervention from the local authorities. So then Saturday morning, when it all dies down, all the business owners, any building owners downtown, we all started to board up what was left of the storefronts. So I'm thinking, okay, now I got the store fortified. I can rest tonight. I was up all night. And what's left of the inside will be left alone. Well, no. So Saturday night, a group of people with skateboards pounded a hole through the plywood. They took turns pounding through the plywood till they made a man-sized hole. I've got a picture of it. And they all crawled back through that hole again and destroyed what the rest of the store.
That's awful.
It was. And that was a tough time because, we were without revenue for, like I said, almost 3 months. And then we feel we're going to get back on our feet again. And then that set us back 2 or 3 weeks to reopen. And then it was impossible to get glass until the middle of July. So we were boarded up for another month. And that was hard to do business when you can't see out the window. So,
was your insurance able to compensate you for the damage?
Fortunately, my insurance company was incredible. They worked with me above and beyond, got me whole, got me back on my feet. And along with the insurance company, my landlord, John Barnard, he was incredible. He did everything he could for his tenants to help them get to the other side of this. And I'll never forget him for that.
Were you able to receive any assistance from any of the other aid programs that were available at that time?
They did have a payroll or some compensation program. They did a loan.
Oh, yeah. The payroll protection, I think.
I think that's what it was. Yeah. So that helped because the one thing that bothered me more than anything was my employees rely on their check. And so between unemployment and with the payroll protection, we were able to keep their mortgage payments, their car payments flowing. And then finally we were able to reopen. And so we all were able to make an income again.
So then the question became, when is the foot traffic going to come back?
Right. People, again, there's a lot of good people in the world. And not just my business, but I know it was all around. People made a huge effort to try and help small businesses like myself get back on their feet. They went out of their way to try and support these stores, like the restaurants, the takeout orders and things like that. My customers, they wanted to start a GoFundMe page. And I said, there's no way I can accept that. I go, if you really want to support the store, buy a gift card, and then I can return that to you in goods and service down the road when I get back on my feet. I go, that would be helpful, but I didn't want to just take money to take it. I wanted to give something back. But that was huge. And I'm sure that happened with a lot of retailers where people stepped up and said, what can we do to help you get back on your feet? It was really heartfelt. So I'll never forget those days.
As you said at the beginning of the interview, that you have a significant amount of business now from the people who have moved downtown. That's helpful. So are you not as concerned about how many people work downtown now? Because we're still sort of in that nebulous area.
For me, we've been okay because, like I said, most of our customers, they're not going to go anywhere else. And so whether they're working from home or they're working across the street, they're making an effort to come down to work with us. And the other thing, too, is a lot of these people that are moving downtown work from their homes. And so it's kind of a different type of workforce, but there are people working down here again, but not the numbers that were before a pandemic.
Oh, that's fascinating. The people, who work from home are workers.
Right.
They're just not in an office building.
Yeah.
It's been 25 years. What are the qualities of a good jewelry store owner?
I've always felt that you have to maintain a certain quality of product. And it's real easy to compromise the quality to make somebody feel they're getting a good deal. And I've never, ever gone that direction. One of the luxuries I've had being a store owner is that I understand how jewelry is supposed to be made because I'm a goldsmith. I'm a designer. I'm a craftsman. And so when I purchase anything for the store for my inventory, I make sure that it's made a certain way that it's going to have longevity. And the stones that we use are a certain quality, so they always look as beautiful 20 years from now as they did the day you bought it. And if you don't do that, it's just a matter of time before the cheapness catches up with you. So, or the poor quality. So that's what I feel really makes a good store owner, somebody who's knowledgeable on product and knows how to offer value. Most people, they just want to make sure they're getting what they expect to buy and in the quality that they're expecting to get. And if they get that over and over, they're going to return.
Over the 26 years that you've owned Windsor Jewelry, how has the jewelry business changed? And I'll preface this by saying the only thing that I know about the jewelry business is what I hear from financial publications that say the millennial folks and the Gen Z folks aren't as interested in jewelry as their moms and dads and grandparents. So that's all I know. Tell me what's really happening in the jewelry business now.
Probably the biggest change that I feel is the competition that we have with online. So you really have to pay attention to that so that you're competitive, but also you got to know what they're offering so you can explain the difference, why their product might be less money. There's a reason. It's not because they can't buy it for any less than I do, unless it's made a lesser quality or they use, different materials. So I'd stay, I follow all that. And that way I can offer reasonable explanations why ours is priced one way and theirs is priced another. And then another thing too is that maybe they're not buying as much jewelry, but they still all want an engagement ring. And maybe not now they're interested in jewelry at their age, but as they get older, they start to appreciate something nice or something that's really cool looking, designed beautifully. And they're going to start adding jewelry to their wardrobe eventually. Maybe not at first, but they will. And they want to touch things too. They may go online and research it and find out what they're looking for, but they always end up, I think, in a brick and mortar to make that purchase.
How did you do during the Taylor Swift weekend? Was it any different for you?
We geared up for a big weekend. It never happened.
Really?
And even the masses of people that the city had planned for on the street, we didn't see that. The foot traffic was not as great as I think they anticipated it would be. And so my theory there was I think the people came in during the day, prepped for the show, got to their hotel's room, went to the show, and then the next morning they had to figure out how to get out of town. And then the next group came in. And they were so involved in the Taylor Swift experience, everything going around the convention center. I don't know that they wandered the city as much as I'm sure the restaurants and bars did well because they have to eat and drink, but I don't think that they saw a lot of the city. I think it was all Taylor Swift.
That was my experience, yeah, as it was mostly the Southwest.
Right. I prepared to have my employees park 4 blocks away and I was going to shuttle them in. It was like the Super Bowl because that's how they were telling me it was going to be. And we drove to our garages on Meridian Street like no traffic.
You live in town.
So I lived way south forever. And 2 years ago, part of my exit strategy was to downsize and we moved to the north side of Indy.
So are you going to stay in town?
Big part of this retirement is, like I said earlier, all my grandchildren. And I want to be flexible because they live in 3 different parts of the United States. And so we want to bounce around. And at first we thought we would just leave Indianapolis, but now we think we're going to keep a home base here. And this is where we'll stay most of the time and then travel to the grandkids from there.
Get a big camper.
Well, that's what everybody tells me.
Get
but
a big RV.
I'm going to just go to their house and have them put me up.
All right. That's cool. Well, I wish you the best. That sounds like a great way to enter your 70s.
This was very kind, Mason. Thank you for letting me just kind of tell my story. This was nice.
Well, we'll miss having you across the street.
Well, I'm going to miss it. You have no idea. It's been a very emotional time, and I hope that I can be a part of whatever happens and still have relationships with all my friends. But yeah, I will miss it all.
My thanks again to Greg Bires. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in this week's edition of IBJ that I want to draw to your attention. First up, the bid to bring one of the top 2025 events in the LIV Men's Golf League was well served by the impression Central Indiana left on its executives during the U.S. Olympic swim trials in June. But as Mickey Shuey reports, the way was paved months earlier. Also in this week's issue, Kate Sharon explains why recent comments from Donald Trump have raised suspicions in the tech industry that the CHIPS and Science Act, which has been central to several major economic development projects announced in Indiana, could be altered or abandoned. And Dave Lindquist profiles Brian McCutcheon, who has threaded the needle for creating sophisticated and yet accessible, large-scale public art in Indianapolis. And again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it is a lot easier to access all of the latest local business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months, just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is. Just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.